It says we're live. So we are live. Hi, Mike. How are you
Oh,
doing?
no, wait a second. Don't. Oh, no, I'm not ready. I am ready, Lee. So good to see you.
So good to see you. Well, here we are for our first episode of Gather Dynamics. I'm here in the UK, in London. Mike, where are you?
I am just outside of Melbourne in Australia.
Fantastic. And I've known Mike for near on 2 years now. For those that don't know me, I'm Lisa. I'm founder of the Wentworth Collective. We are a strategic event management consultancy priding ourselves on engaging events that transform businesses and have lasting impact. And it was a meeting of minds when I met Mike at a mastermind for the Do lectures, because we both had the same ethos when it comes to designing events for corporate businesses. But Mike, why don't you share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
And I'll add to that for those down under that aren't familiar with Lisa and her work. The events that you design and produce and curate are astonishing. They are, from at one end of the spectrum, small, intimate, highly, beautiful, delicate experiences, to all the way up to these astonishing large scale experiences that people but talk about for years and years to come as the best event our company has ever done. All those little touches, all the fancy trimmings and the magical stuff. So it's very, very I feel very thrilled to be having this conversation with you, Lisa. Now, for your fabulous audience that would have no idea who I am, I speak and I write books and I work with large corporate organizations and professionals all around the world, largely a lot of the time around creativity, culture, leadership, but it's all about experience. How can we create experiences for our learning, or experiences for building teams, for partnering, for collaboration, for innovation? How can we use the power of experience to shift the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world? And I love it.
Absolutely. And this came about because we just thought it'd be interesting to just share some of our thinking. And hearing a lot with organizations, we're living in a time when, budgets are tight, but people need to gather. So how can people make the most of that time? Time's precious, time is currency. How can we make the most of people's time together? Now, we could talk for hours about the subject, but we've decided we're going to hone in on a particular area, aren't we?
Yeah.
And the subject that we're going to talk about today, we're probably going to be talking for about 20 minutes or so. Please put any questions in the comments, because we'd love to answer them for you. And also give us a thumbs up if you're there. We'd love to know who's watching today. That would be great.
I'm actually doing lots of thumbs up and hearts just to make us feel special.
There we go.
I just gave you a little love, Lise.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
But the subject we're going to talk about, and actually I was reading about it at the weekend, is aliveness.
Yeah.
People want to feel alive. We are humans. We want to be with human beings. We want to have a sense of belonging. We want to have a sense of togetherness. And actually, we have more meaning in our life when we have this visceral feeling of being alive. And when TWC, when we organize our events, we design them with that lens. I mentioned before at the top of this call about getting people engaged, because it's when people that are engaged, it's then that you have the connection, that human connection. And when they're connected, then you can have transformative thinking, and then the lasting impact, which is what you want from that moment in time. So I thought today, Mike, we could explore that a little bit more about what it means to feel alive. How can we incorporate that into our events? And maybe for some of the viewers, they'll come away with a few hints and tips that they might use when designing their experiences.
Absolutely love it.
Great. Yeah. So I thought I'd kick off really with, we were talking about this last week when we were preparing for this call. Just when people design their events, I think for me, more so in my background, come from a thought that people lead with logistics. So often you'll get a brief for an event and it will start with the venue, the location, how many people in the room. I mean, back in the day it was, is there or is there not natural daylight? And you can lead with that. You can find that. But what we find is as we go on, we have to reverse engineer it and go back to the feeling that you want in the room. So I think the first place to start is that feeling of, that design, the event design. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, we would I would always talk with my clients about cementing their intent. If through all of the potential possibilities and all of the outcomes and the desired, this is what we want and blah 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 blah, to bring that down to one ideally, but maybe two or three. How do you want them to feel when they arrive, during the event, and then when they leave? Don't worry about the outcomes and the capability uplift and anything like that. Just how do you want them to feel? And it's not a question that often is embraced in the boardroom as much as it should be. But if we're going to gather people together and we want them to align around a particular idea or a set of information or a new strategy, or we want them to build relationships, then thinking about how they feel is the most important question to be asking before you make any decisions about your event, like booking a venue or booking the catering or the run sheet or the timings or whatever, or any of that. How do you want them to feel? And this is it's a pretty foreign question for people that maybe do an annual event, or they palm it off to their EA or someone in marketing, and it's not a question that they're asking a lot of the time in their work. So it's a juicy one, but it's so powerful.
And there's no guarantee. Like, if you've got your run sheet and you're going to book your coffee breaks, that's going to happen, but you can't guarantee feelings. But what we've been discussing is actually providing the ingredients to create that atmosphere, to create that feeling, and I think that's what's interesting is think about, those ingredients that you're putting in, like a cake or something, that you're putting them all together for it to alchemize, to create that visceral, hearts and minds for people to feel something. When they start feeling with their hearts, that's when the action happens. And that's when the memory and the memory recalls, you remember, as well as aliveness that I'm slightly obsessed by, it's moments. People are remembering moments in their life, and moments matter. And I think that's what we're trying to create when we're designing these events, are those moments. So we're starting with the feeling. How do we want them to feel?
Let's pause on that. I'll just drill down on that just for a little bit more. If you really give yourself the space and get with a group of people, and don't do this in meeting room 6 with the fluorescent light and the stale table water. Take whoever's running your event, or even starting to dream about it, who will be part of the production team or the exec team, whoever. Go for a walk outside, or go somewhere that's inspiring, or a beautiful little wine bar, or a library, or something like that. And just sit with these questions for a while. How do we want them to feel? And if you land on how we want them to feel, right after that, then start exploring, well, where are the places where we feel that? What are the experiences that I have in life that I feel that? And you'll be surprised that a lot of them don't require a big budget or a massive lighting rig or people on stilts with beautiful fancy headdresses coming in with flamethrowers. That stuff's amazing, and I love that, and that might align with the intent that you've determined. But a lot of the time you can say, oh wow, we really want people to feel, like you mentioned, a sense of belonging. Well, where do I belong? I belong at home. Well, how do we make it feel like home? Oh, what does that mean? What does home mean to us? It opens up these whole new pathways of really practical possibilities that largely, they don't have to cost an arm and a leg, but they can be so simple, yet create such a more congruent experience for people that is what you're intending and for how them to feel. So it's a really powerful way to start.
No, absolutely. And I think making people feel safe and having their needs met. I always joke, but we have started having a coffee cart at our events. It sounds silly, but it's like people arrive, they're discombobulated, they're arriving from different corners of the globe. They've gone through customs, they've got their luggage. You want to ground them at the beginning and make them feel, like you say, at home, because then they'll be concentrating on the message that you're delivering and not distracted about the day or the journey. You want to create another world for them. So you want them to feel in this in a different world where they're just focusing on the experience as well. Which sort of leads me on to another point, Mike, and I've been thinking a lot recently about.
Can I quickly jump in just again? I just want to point out for our down under viewers, Melbourne is the coffee capital of the world. So for the last 15 years, we have been having several coffee carts at every single event, like it could be 3 people or 3,000. So for those in Australia, Europe, despite, you know, Italy and whatnot being big coffee crew and, you know, originating there, yeah, coffee's a bit of a no-brainer down here.
Oh, yeah, it is. But, you know, sometimes it gets overlooked. But no, but good point. Also in the design, think about how people want to feel, but linked with that is energy. So I think the energy, if you've got a 3-day conference, I often find that the discussion will start is, okay, these are the things that we want to talk about. We want to talk about finances or where we've been or where we're going. And that's great. But what we want to try to avoid is people going into autopilot, going, oh, here we go again. I'm going to sit down. There's going to be a PowerPoint with a slide. What I'm really focusing on, and going back to the point, everything links, doesn't it? About, you know, that feeling and how you want people to feel, is when is the best time to talk about those subjects. You know, we were talking about the conference I'm going to be speaking at in a few weeks' time, and about that slots, like where you're at. And you've got to think about the energy when people arrive. When are they primed? When can you lift them up? When they can absorb it? When's the greatest time to team build? I think I was talking to you before about an event where a client wanted to end on a high and thought team building would be a great way to do that. But we challenged that thinking by saying, okay, definitely end on a high, not challenging you, but do you not want to, bond your group earlier on in the process? Let them come together and take that energy of them networking together and lead that. How powerful that their sense of belonging as a group. So what are your thoughts on energy, Mike, throughout life? I say that that's how my logical brain works. I'm thinking day 1, day 2, day 3.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is the most beautiful part when you shift the way you think about gathering people and you open yourself up to painting this live canvas of energy. And the paint is the experiences, and the experiences are shaped by the environment, and the environment is made up of the venue, the temperature of the room, what they did beforehand, where they're sitting, how they're sitting, the length of content, who's speaking, the lighting, rah, 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 rah. And this is where it becomes really, really playful, because if you take that, Lisa is the best. Tony, I'm so with you. Tony's the best. Jade's also the best.
Tony's
Jade's
the
from
best
Australia.
for those that, you know.
Okay, so we'll quickly park it here for a second. So Jade is the best. Lisa's the best. Tony's the best. I'm still waiting. Am I the best? I want to be in this club.
Yeah. You're already in the club, Mike. Focus.
Oh, thank you. Okay, focus. But again, you know, I keep coming back to this. If you start with how do we want to make them feel, then you start to go, well, how do we want to make them feel across the entire event? What are they going to need? How will they feel? And how do we want them to feel? So they're probably going to be dipping in energy here. Is that the right time to stuff that panel session because it's convenient for the minister, or it's convenient for the exec team because they've got to leave to make a flight? But you've got a panel session happening right before that. So let's think about how they feel. Thank you, Jade. Let's think about how they feel and how we want them to feel. And maybe that panel session isn't a good idea. In fact, it's a terrible idea. And I'm sorry, executives who want this event to be worth every penny, catch a later flight and let's give them a chance to reset, or let's lift them up, or let's fill them full of something. Or, you know, when you start to unpack it in this way, it becomes such a beautiful, playful process.
Well, it does.
To think about that sculpture.
It is. And you sort of like, you look at the pizza. The other thing I've been slightly obsessed by, linked to moments, is pits and peaks. So where are the pits? You know, some people know, some people don't. I'm a huge fan of Disney, go to Disneyland quite a bit, used to like it, but I'm always fascinated by the queues. What Disney does really well is when you're in a queue and you're queuing for 3 hours, they make it enjoyable. So, you know, you have to think about those sluggish moments when you are talking about it in the afternoon. Okay, how can you lift people up and keep that energy high? But I think also another part is creating space. You know, it's the space in between. Like, you've got, I find what's fascinating as well, it's like when you go for a run and your greatest ideas are when you're away from your house and you're brainstorming, is think about, okay, There's a time to talk about finance. There's a time for team building. But where's that time for reflection? Where's that time for integration of the messages as well? So like you say, it's this beautiful tapestry of spaces, those that are fixed, those that aren't, and focusing on how that works. And also your participants hopefully don't even know it's happening. It's like this beautiful symphony of like scaffolding. They're being guided along with the energy.
You know, I'm conscious of the time because we were just going to do a quick little, hey, everybody, and test this little concept, whether we would, you know, do this more regularly, which I think we should. And if I'm to reflect back on what we've covered, which is, it's been a lot, even in 14 minutes. I think maybe giving people just a quick sense of this is a very, very exciting time.
Yeah.
To be in events if you're in events, or to reimagine your events if you work in conferences, or to reimagine the events that you run and host with your organization. Because people are craving live experiences more than ever.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not going to go into AI. It's obvious, all of that stuff. We're not going to go into burnout, overwhelm. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone's up to here. They just need something to bring them alive.
Yeah.
Going to another event of which they've been to 30 before in the past, where they show up and it's the same stuff and all the triggers, and here sit on the round tables, and then you got morning tea and I had too many brownies. I shouldn't have. I told myself I wouldn't, but I did. In the afternoon, you're tired and flat. More slides, more speaking, more panels, blah, blah, blah. They will be left behind.
Yeah.
Like, this is the moment to look at your run sheet and cut 50% of it straight up. I did an event last week for local government down here in Melbourne, and it was awesome. They had one keynote in the morning, and then they had a 45-minute morning tea. Not 10 minutes, not 15, 45. Then they did a whole bunch of stream sessions. You could choose between 4 different rooms, but it was one session for 1 hour. Then it was 45-minute lunch. Then it was one session again, different streams, 1 hour. Then 45-minute afternoon tea. And then a quick little hour to finish with another keynote. And so there was breakouts, there was time, there was an AI room you could go and do stuff. There was so many options. You could have gone there, taken a few calls, had a beautiful lunch with some people and seen one keynote, and it would have still been a really effective use of your time. And you would have left inspired and energized instead of overwhelmed and depleted, which is what, if we're honest, that's what 95% of events do to us in the business environment.
It's true. And I often hear, you know, because, you know, often people share with me their woes or what they're doing. And, you know, someone will say, oh, I've got a work event. They'll have a sense of dread before they even go. A sense of here we go again. And actually, I think by focusing on the experience, focusing on the connection, focusing on how, you know, on those moments when people, you know, when people feel alive, you're going to get the best outcome, you know, and we talk about that with our clients, and doing something different, giving them opportunities, actually taking risks. You know, we did an experience recently for, you know, I work with professional services companies, and we did an art activity, and there was some eye rolling and no one wants to do it. But actually the thought and care that we put into it, but it was greater than that, because we created space for people to down tools, put their phone away. The overarching the overarching strategy was about connection and about networking, but we used the mechanism of an art activity to do that. But we didn't call it team building, because again, you've got to change the script, you've got to change the narrative. People want to have different experiences, and like you were saying, say with your keynote, create opportunities for people to connect. Create another world, make them want to go. I saw Laura's note there about, you know, how much pushback do you receive when you challenge senior leaders and mind-numbing agendas that they spend hours poring over. I mean, one thing that we do, Laura, when we meet with our clients before, and this goes back to what we said at the very start, is we do not lead with logistics. When we speak to senior leaders or people running these events, we ask, how do you want them to feel? What do you want the outcome to be? So when we see, and I'll give you an example, I had one organization who said to me, we want it to be fun, Lisa. I really want it to be fun. And I chat, you sure? as we were designing the agenda, and I saw this jam-packed agenda that started at like 8 in the morning, finished at 6, no breaks in between, I can then push back to a senior leader and say, 1 minute, you said this, and create these design meetings away from the pressure when they've got time to think about their vision. Give senior leaders time to really dream big and remind them of what the outcomes are. So I think you have the opportunity to challenge. Sometimes you'll have organizations that are like, do you know what? No, actually, we have to talk about finance. Fine. But then you have to find the right agenda. But also our job as event designers is to challenge, is to make them feel safe, is to say, we've done this before, don't you worry, because we understand our audience. And I think both you and Mike, we understand the audience. We've been doing it long enough that we know, okay, yeah, they might not want to do art, or they might want, you might feel nervous about having a 45-minute break, but I can assure you it's going to work. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Mike.
Yeah, there's two things I'd love to add. One being, yeah, I'm actually doing another event next week in Sydney for event planners and conference organisers, partnering with AV1, which is a big production company down here, the beautiful space called the Calyx in Sydney, the Botanic Gardens, and a host of other amazing partners. And it's to give them a sense of behind the scenes what production really is. But my role on this day is to go in with a bigger, as the host, a bigger conversation, a narrative around you as an event designer or an event planner or an event or a conference, organizer. It's actually your job to create these bold, beautiful visions for your people. And they're not just looking for you, even though it feels like it, and maybe this has been the case up until now. They're not just looking for you to book the flights, book the venue, get you a good deal on catering, all of that stuff. Actually, they need your expertise. They need your experience. That's the real value you have. It's not making calls and organizing flights. So now's the time to be bolder and braver and to start to do that. And then this will answer Laura's question, which is, I've received so much pushback over the last 10 years for just about everything that I've ever done. And for a while there, I just wouldn't tell them. And then I'd go and do something on the day and, it would be wildly successful. And they'd go, oh, yes, that's what we always thought, even though it was not what we agreed to. But now I leverage the power of ChatGPT, and I actually take, concepts or ideas or things that I'm planning to do, and I go, hey, buddy, I've got a very highly personalized GPT now. And I say, how do I say this in the most effective, compelling, concise way that a senior leader, HR director, or a conference organizer, or CEO, whatever, will understand that what they're asking for, and I might take a transcript of our conversations or all the outcomes that they want. How do I show? I know that this is going to work, but I might not have the language that's really going to land for them. How do I say this in a way that they go, oh my God, this is exactly what we've been dreaming of? It's the radical experience that I know will work, but maybe I've had difficulty communicating that ahead of time or helping them see the picture. But I think this is a marvelous tool to be able to go, hey, or give me 4 different options for the cynic on the call, for the optimist on the call, for the poor dear who did spend 3 weeks planning this big agenda that you're about to come in and just destroy, gently. But it's actually a really powerful tool. So I thoroughly recommend
it's great
using
idea.
it. Yeah.
And also I think to challenge that, I think senior leaders and organizations, they want to do something different. If they want to increase productivity, they want to retain talent, they want to attract talent, they want to attract, different generations. If you want to do something different, or you want to be a radical high performing, you have to do something different. So that's why, and I think we've probably got 5 minutes left. We want to flip the script, because how can you flip the script if you're not taking those risks? And in reality, that's, I think that's what people expect. They want to do something different. I've seen so many people who share their experiences. Obviously, this great experience. It's those moments they want to say, "This is what we did." I love it when I have so many of my clients come back to me saying, "You're Lisa. You did that great art activity," or "I remember we did that breathwork class before people were doing breathwork or Reiki." Injecting something different, that they've got that association with that experience with great care, but they feel happy to try that. They do it on holiday. Why would they not do it when they're at an event?
And there's another beautiful invitation in this conversation where we don't always have the confidence, particularly if we're in a room of people that are our boss or our colleagues or they're our clients. And maybe they're the ones signing the check, whether it's a salary or an invoice. It can be difficult to say, well, I'm not sure that's a great idea, or I thought we were doing this, or it's easier a lot of the time to just go, okay, that's what they said they want. But it's a beautiful invitation to step into your power.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the time in the past that I haven't had that power, and I've said, okay, that's what you wanted, even though I know I'll save it on the day. But I really have lent into this, and I've even said, I remember saying this a few times. It was like 3 calls in a row with 3 different clients. It was late last year, and they said, but how do you build psychological safety so quickly? What do you use? What tools? And I said, that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what you're paying me for.
Yeah.
That's what I've spent 44 years of my life learning and growing and experiencing. Yeah. Like, I don't need to necessarily explain that. I mean, I use a much more romantic, but it was so powerful because it was a moment for me of like, I've arrived now. I don't actually need to explain this to you.
No.
This is my expertise. And that takes time to get to.
Yeah.
But it is a beautiful, like, this idea of disrupting, this idea of doing things differently and not challenging the status quo or the people that are paying our bills, but offering alternative solutions with the kind of courage and conviction that puts them at ease. It's kind of improves your whole life. I mean, look at me.
I agree.
You too could be me.
It's that confidence.
Being facetious, folks.
No, but I think it's that confidence, and especially in the worlds that we work in and our clients, that quite similar worlds, that they like to know, well, look, I deal with a lot of law, the law firms or the insurance brokers, they've done it, and people want to be the trailblazer. We've said this before, they want to do it. And I think having the experience, you and I now showing our age, but being the ages that we are, we've got the experience and the book of work to show the proof of concept, to say this works, this does work. Your delegates will be fine, your guests will be fine. They're gonna be living their best life, they're gonna be feeling alive, and they're gonna have that message recall and association of, God, that was a cool event.
Yeah.
Which I think, people want to do it. So I think what we're saying is, just as we've got, well, if anyone's got any questions, put them, because we'll be wrapping up soon. It's all about the intentional design. I'd say
start with feeling.
Start with feeling.
Yeah.
Design it appropriately. Think about the energy. Think about those peak moments. Think about the pit moments, and design accordingly.
And we can. Yeah. Oh, sorry to jump in.
No. Think about how you want them, think about how you want them to feel, and be brave.
Yeah.
Be brave, go for it. It's a moment in time. You've got an opportunity. Time is our currency. We don't get it back. We've only got one opportunity to, make it count.
And that, I think, even that passion that you're talking through right there, I have that a lot of the time too. And I'm sure the people listening in have that. They're passionate about the event they're running, or the possibility of creating something magical for the people that will be in the room. Could be their colleagues, could be their customers, it doesn't matter. But there's that passion also counts for a lot. So when you're in these conversations with people trying to push the edges a little bit, if you're wildly passionate about it, your belief and your conviction can get them over the line. Now, Lisa, I think that we'll probably have to do this again, because this was fun, and but I thought we're gonna need, next time we're gonna have a soundtrack, and this, looking at you and just your whole vibe, I reckon this is gonna be our soundtrack.
Love it. Can't help it, mate. That's gonna wake up. I love it. Count me in.
This is great. We should do this again.
Well, let's do it again, Mike. Absolutely. And if there's any other questions, post them in the comments, because we can reply afterwards. And to anyone that watched it on the replay, thank you for joining us. Until the next time, I think we will gather again, Mike.
Yeah, we will. And Jade is awesome. She just left another one, and it's a juicy one. Love it, Mara. See you, Laura. See you. Who else is on here? Tony. Good on you, Tony.
So,
Get
thanks,
out of here,
Tony.
kids.
And Mara. I know Mara will like that song.
I love Mara.